The humiliation. The revolving door of the Holland Regency swept me into a world of marble floors and crystal chandeliers. I'd walked through countless luxury hotels in my career, but this time felt different. Maybe it was the weight of the deal I was about to close, or maybe it was the way the bellhop's smile faltered when he saw me. I'm Charlotte McKinley, 48 years old, and I've built a clean energy company from the ground up. My dove gray power suit was tailored, my vintage weekender bag was leather, and my confidence was earned through years of proving myself in boardrooms across the country. I belonged here, and I knew it. The lobby buzzed with the quiet efficiency of wealth. Businessmen in $1,000 suits spoke in hushed tones while their wives examined jewelry displays. The pianist in the corner played something classical, his fingers dancing across ivory keys. Everything was perfect, orchestrated, and expensive. Behind the mahogany check-in desk stood Drew Stanton. Mid-30s, hair slicked back with enough product to survive a hurricane, and a smile that looked practiced in the mirror. His eyes swept over me once, then immediately darted to the couple behind me, designer tracksuits, a small poodle, and enough diamonds to fund a small country. Charlotte McKinley, penthouse suite, 2 nights, I said, sliding my platinum card and ID across the marble counter. The reservation had been confirmed that morning. Everything was in order. Drew barely glanced at the documents. "Sorry, Miss McKinney," he said, deliberately mangling my name. "Our penthouse is reserved for VIP status members. Perhaps a deluxe king on the 6th floor would be more suitable." The tone was unmistakable. I'd heard it before in other hotels, other cities, other moments when someone decided I didn't look like I belonged in their expensive world. The pianist missed a note. The couple behind me began whispering, their voices carrying just enough for me to hear fragments. "Walked in off the street, and, what is she doing here?" "My assistant confirmed the penthouse this morning," I said, keeping my voice level. "Reservation number 89172. Drew's nostrils flared slightly. His fingers hovered over the keyboard without moving. "This requires management approval. I doubt we'd place a first-time guest there." The lobby seemed to freeze. Other guests were turning to look now, drawn by the tension like moths to flame. Drew's smile never wavered, but his eyes had gone cold. This wasn't about reservations or management approval. This was about power, assumptions, and the color of my skin. "I'll downgrade you and refund the difference," he offered, his tone so casual it was almost insulting. "No," I said, my voice steady as steel. "Call your general manager. Now." Instead, Drew tilted his head slightly. As if on cue, 2 security guards in navy blazers appeared at my sides. They moved with the practiced ease of men who'd done this before, who knew exactly how to make someone disappear without causing a scene. "Ma'am, you're disrupting check-in," Drew announced, his voice pitched just loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "Security will escort you out until you calm down." That's when my Harvard law degree finally earned its keep. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and looked directly at Drew. Under the Civil Rights Act, denying equal accommodation based on race is actionable. "Would you like to continue?" For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. But he'd already committed to this path, and men like Drew rarely back down once they've shown their hand. "Security, escort miss, whatever, out until she calms down." The guards moved closer, their presence a clear threat. Other guests watched like this was dinner theater, some amused, others uncomfortable. I caught one last glimpse of Drew's satisfied smirk as the guards guided me toward the door. The Chicago wind hit my face like a slap as I stepped onto the sidewalk. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from pure, concentrated rage. I'd been humiliated, dismissed, and treated like a criminal for the sin of existing while black in a 5-star hotel. But Drew Stanton had just made the biggest mistake of his career. He'd picked the wrong woman to underestimate, and he was about to learn exactly how expensive that mistake could be. The strategy. The coffee shop next door to the Holland Regency became my war room. I found a corner table with a clear view of the hotel's entrance and opened my laptop. My hands had stopped shaking, replaced by the cold precision that had served me well in countless legal battles. The first thing I did was save the recording from my phone. Drew's words were crystal clear, the dismissive tone, the deliberate mispronunciation of my name, the casual racism wrapped in corporate speak. But a phone recording was just the beginning. I needed documentation, evidence, and a strategy that would hit them where it hurt most, their reputation and their bottom line. I pulled up the hotel's corporate structure. Holland Regency wasn't just some independent boutique hotel. It was part of Regency Holdings, a multi-billion-dollar hospitality empire with properties across 3 continents. Their stock was publicly traded, their brand carefully cultivated, and their legal department presumably well-funded and experienced. Perfect. The bigger they were, the harder they'd fall. My email opened to a blank document titled, Immediate Legal Notice, Discriminatory Denial of Service. Years of corporate law had taught me that the first shot across the bow needed to be precise, professional, and absolutely devastating. I started typing. This notice serves to inform Regency Holdings of actionable discrimination that occurred at your Holland Regency Chicago location on today's date. Ms. Charlotte McKinley, a confirmed guest with valid reservations and payment, was denied equal accommodation services based on racial bias. The legal language flowed like water. I cited the Civil Rights Act, Illinois state equal accommodation statutes, and federal anti-discrimination laws. I attached my booking confirmation, screenshots of the reservation system, and most importantly, the video recording of Drew's discriminatory treatment. But I didn't stop there. The CC list on that email was a thing of beauty: the hotel's general counsel, their VP of Risk Management, Chief Diversity Officer, and the entire executive team. I also included Sarah Chen, a columnist at the Chicago Tribune whom I'd represented pro bono 3 years ago in a First Amendment case. Sarah owed me a favor, and her column reached 500,000 readers every week. My own legal team got a blind copy. By the time I hit send, I'd already laid the groundwork for either a quick settlement or a very public legal battle. Either way, Drew Stanton was about to learn that actions have consequences. Through the coffee shop window, I could see the hotel lobby. Drew was still behind the desk, probably feeling quite proud of himself. The couple with the poodle had checked in and were being escorted to their room with smiles and champagne. Business as usual at the Holland Regency. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant, energy deal meeting moved to 2 p.m. tomorrow. Everything okay? I smiled for the first time since walking into that lobby. Everything's perfect. Just handling some legal business. The coffee shop's Wi-Fi was surprisingly fast for a place that probably saw its fair share of hotel overflow. I used it to research recent discrimination cases, settlement amounts, and corporate responses to public relations disasters. The numbers were encouraging. Hotels had paid millions to settle similar cases, especially when video evidence was involved. I also did something that would prove crucial later: I researched every member of Regency Holdings' board of directors. Their backgrounds, their other corporate affiliations, their public statements on diversity and inclusion. Knowledge was power, and I was gathering all the ammunition I could carry. An hour after sending the email, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was New York, Regency Holdings corporate headquarters. Ms. McKinley? The voice was female, nervous, and trying very hard to sound calm. This is Lydia Park, Chief Risk Officer at Regency Holdings. We received your email, and we are absolutely horrified by what happened. Please accept our sincere apologies. I let the silence stretch for a few seconds before responding. Ms. Park, your employee's bias publicly humiliated me, caused significant reputational damage, and violated both state and federal law. I'm considering punitive damages. The pause on the other end told me everything I needed to know. They were scared, scrambling, and completely unprepared for someone who knew exactly how to fight back. What can we do to make this right? Lydia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I smiled, watching Drew through the window as he continued his shift, oblivious to the storm gathering around him. I'll send you my terms within the hour. I suggest you review them very carefully. The negotiations. My terms were surgical in their precision. I'd learned long ago that the most effective negotiations came from understanding exactly what your opponent feared most. For a publicly traded hospitality company, that fear had three faces: legal liability, public relations disasters, and stock price volatility. The email I sent to Lydia Park was a masterpiece of corporate pressure. To resolve this matter without further legal action, Regency Holdings must agree to the following terms within 24 hours. 1. Written apology delivered in person by the general manager. 2. $25,000 donation to the Urban League of Chicago. 3. Drew Stanton suspended pending full investigation. 4. Company-wide implicit bias training program certified by an independent third-party firm. Failure to agree to these terms will result in a $10 million civil rights lawsuit and a press conference scheduled for tomorrow at noon. I didn't have to wait long for a response. Lydia called back within 20 minutes, her voice even more strained than before. Ms. McKinley, we're prepared to discuss your terms, but some of these demands are quite extensive. Which part seems extensive to you, Ms. Park? The apology for your employees' racist behavior? The modest donation to a civil rights organization? Or the training program to prevent this from happening again? The amount of the potential lawsuit is exactly what discrimination costs in federal court, I interrupted. I've researched recent settlements. The Marriott chain paid $8.5 million for similar discrimination. The Hilton settled for $12 million after a viral video. Your company's deep pockets and public profile make you an attractive target for punitive damages. The silence on the other end stretched for nearly a minute. I could practically hear the gears turning as Lydia calculated risks, consulted legal teams, and probably texted furiously with her superiors. We need to escalate this to our board, she finally said. You have 18 hours remaining, I replied, then hung up. The next few hours were a fascinating study in corporate panic. Through my contacts in the legal community, I learned that Regency Holdings had convened an emergency board meeting. Their stock price had already begun to slip as word leaked through back channels about potential legal action. Their legal team was burning through billable hours at $800 per hour, trying to assess their exposure. Meanwhile, I was having dinner at a quiet restaurant across town, reviewing the energy deal that had brought me to Chicago in the first place. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Regency Holdings scrambled to contain their discrimination scandal, I was about to close a $60 million deal that would make their settlement look like pocket change. At 11:47 p.m., my phone rang. Lydia Park again, but this time she wasn't alone. I could hear other voices in the background, the kind of hushed urgency that only came from corporate crisis management. Ms. McKinley, we've reviewed your terms with our board and legal counsel. We're prepared to accept them with one small modification. I'm listening. Instead of a $25,000 donation, we'd like to offer a $50,000 contribution to the Urban League, plus funding for a comprehensive diversity and inclusion program across all our properties. We estimate the total value at around $5 million. I almost smiled. They were trying to buy their way out of this with a larger donation, hoping to avoid the public embarrassment of a lawsuit. But they'd fundamentally misunderstood what I was after. And Drew Stanton? Suspended immediately, pending a full investigation. If the investigation confirms discriminatory behavior, he'll be terminated. Ms. Park, I appreciate the enhanced donation offer, but you're missing the point. This isn't about money, it's about accountability. Your employee's behavior was captured on video, witnessed by dozens of people, and represents a clear violation of civil rights law. There's no if in this investigation. Another long pause. More muffled voices in the background. We agree to all your terms, she said finally. Drew Stanton will be suspended immediately and terminated upon completion of the investigation. The general manager will deliver a written apology in person tomorrow morning. When would be convenient for you? 8 a.m. sharp. In the hotel lobby, with media present. Media? Ms. Park, discrimination thrives in darkness. Accountability requires light. I've already confirmed attendance from the Tribune and Channel 7 News. Unless you'd prefer to explain your employees' behavior in federal court instead. The final pause was the longest yet. I could practically hear the executive team calculating the cost of public embarrassment versus the cost of a protracted legal battle. 8 a.m. tomorrow, Lydia agreed. Is there anything else? Just one thing. I want Drew Stanton present for the apology. He created this situation, and he should face the consequences. After hanging up, I sat in my hotel room, a different hotel, naturally, and reflected on the day's events. In less than 12 hours, I'd gone from being humiliated by a racist desk clerk to dictating terms to a billion-dollar corporation. The transformation was intoxicating, but it also felt like justice. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen at the Tribune. Story goes live at 6 a.m. Video is incredible. This is going to blow up. I smiled, looking out at the Chicago skyline. Drew Stanton had no idea what tomorrow morning would bring, but I suspected he was about to learn a very expensive lesson about the cost of discrimination. The reckoning. The Holland Regency lobby at 8 a.m. looked very different from the night before. Gone was the casual elegance and whispered conversations. Instead, news crews had set up their equipment, reporters clutched notepads and recorders, and hotel staff scurried around like ants whose heel had been kicked. I arrived exactly on time, wearing the same dove-gray suit from yesterday. It felt appropriate, a reminder of how this all began. The regional general manager, Robert Hayes, stood near the front desk with bloodshot eyes and the haggard look of a man who'd spent the night in crisis meetings. Beside him stood Drew Stanton, his usual confident demeanor replaced by something approaching terror. Drew's name tag was gone. His position at the front desk had been taken by someone else. He stood slightly apart from the other staff, like a man awaiting execution, with an HR representative shadowing his every move. The media turnout exceeded my expectations. Sarah Chen from the Tribune was there, along with reporters from Channel 7, Channel 2, and the Sun-Times. Someone had clearly leaked additional details, because they came armed with questions about corporate discrimination policies and settlement amounts. Ms. McKinley, Robert Hayes stepped forward, his voice carrying across the marble lobby. On behalf of Regency Holdings and the Holland Regency Chicago, I want to offer our deepest, most sincere apologies for the discriminatory treatment you received yesterday. He pulled out a prepared statement and began reading. We deeply regret that our employees' actions violated not only our company values but your fundamental rights as a human being. There is no excuse for discrimination in any form, and we take full responsibility for this failure. The cameras clicked and rolled as Hayes continued his apology. I watched Drew Stanton during the speech, noting how his hands shook slightly and how he seemed to shrink into himself with each word. Yesterday he'd been the powerful gatekeeper deciding who belonged in his expensive hotel. Today he was a cautionary tale about the consequences of prejudice. When Hayes finished, the reporters immediately pounced with questions. What disciplinary action is being taken? How much is the settlement? Will there be policy changes? Hayes deflected most questions to corporate counsel, but the damage was already done. The story had legs, and everyone in that lobby knew it. Then it was Drew's turn. He stepped forward, his voice barely above a whisper. Ms. McKinley, I want to apologize for my behavior yesterday. It was wrong, unprofessional, and I held up my hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Save it for the deposition, Mr. Stanton. The reporters loved that line. I could see them scribbling notes, already crafting their headlines. Drew's face went pale, and he stepped back into the shadow of his HR handler. After the media circus concluded, Hayes personally escorted me to the penthouse suite, the same room I'd been denied less than 24 hours earlier. The irony was delicious. The suite was everything I'd paid for, 2 stories, panoramic lake views, marble surfaces, and a kitchen stocked with champagne and gourmet snacks. On the dining table sat a handwritten apology letter and an envelope from the hotel's legal team. Inside was a settlement agreement for $10 million, significantly more than I'd initially demanded. The company had clearly decided that paying a large sum quickly was preferable to months of negative publicity and legal fees. Most importantly, the settlement included no non-disclosure agreement. I was free to tell this story to anyone, anywhere, at any time. That freedom was worth more than the money. I signed the agreement with a Mont Blanc pen they'd thoughtfully provided, then called my assistant to confirm the energy deal meeting. "Everything set for 2 p.m., she reported. "The partners are excited to move forward." As I hung up, I realized the beautiful symmetry of the day. I'd started yesterday as a successful businesswoman fighting for basic respect. I was ending today as a successful businesswoman who'd also struck a blow for civil rights and earned enough from the settlement to fund my company's expansion for the next 5 years. The story broke nationally within hours. Five-star hotel pays $10 million after racist treatment dominated news cycles. Cable news brought on legal experts to discuss corporate liability, brand management specialists to analyze reputation damage, and civil rights leaders to contextualize the broader implications. Regency Holdings stock dropped 12% in 2 days. Their board announced a complete review of company policies, mandatory diversity training for all employees, and a partnership with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. The company's response was swift, comprehensive, and expensive, exactly what happened when discrimination met accountability. Drew Stanton was terminated for gross misconduct that afternoon. His LinkedIn profile disappeared overnight, but the internet never forgets. Screenshots of news articles mentioning his name by association with the discrimination case circulated on social media, making him a cautionary tale for hospitality workers everywhere. That evening, I sat in the penthouse suite's living room, looking out at Lake Michigan as the sun set over Chicago. My phone had been ringing all day with interview requests, speaking opportunities, and congratulations from colleagues around the country. Harvard Law School wanted me to speak at their Civil Rights Symposium. TED Talks had reached out about a presentation on turning prejudice into power. The energy deal closed the next day for $60 million, bringing my total windfall from the Chicago trip to $70 million. Not bad for 2 days' work and one very stupid racist. The legacy. 6 months after the Holland Regency incident, I found myself standing at a podium at Harvard Law School, looking out at an auditorium filled with law students, professors, and civil rights advocates. The symposium was titled Modern Civil Rights, Documentation, Strategy, and Corporate Accountability, and I was the keynote speaker. Change doesn't happen in courtrooms, I told the audience. It happens in hotel lobbies, restaurant dining rooms, and corporate boardrooms where someone decides to stand up and say, "This is not acceptable." It happens when we document injustice instead of just enduring it. The story of Drew Stanton and the Holland Regency had become a case study in business schools and law schools across the country. Not just because of the settlement amount, but because of the strategic approach to fighting discrimination in the digital age. The 30-second phone recording had been viewed millions of times, becoming a textbook example of how to document bias in real time. The ripple effects continued to spread. Regency Holdings had implemented their $5 million diversity program across all properties, with quarterly audits and mandatory bias training for every employee. Their partnership with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund had funded legal aid for dozens of discrimination cases nationwide. Other hotel chains had quietly updated their own policies, not wanting to become the next cautionary tale. Drew Stanton, meanwhile, had effectively vanished from the hospitality industry. His termination had been widely reported, and a Google search of his name returned pages of articles about the discrimination case. He'd learned the hard way that in the age of social media and viral videos, racist behavior could destroy a career permanently. My clean energy company had used the settlement money to expand into 3 new markets, creating jobs and advancing renewable energy projects across the Midwest. The business deal I'd originally traveled to Chicago to complete had led to partnerships worth over $200 million in the following months. Success, it turned out, was still the best revenge. But the most meaningful impact was harder to quantify. My inbox filled daily with messages from people who'd experienced similar discrimination but had never known how to fight back. Some sent photos of themselves at hotel front desks, clearly documenting their interactions. Others shared stories of standing up to bias in restaurants, retail stores, and corporate offices. "Your story gave me courage," one woman wrote. "I was turned away from a country club where I had a confirmed reservation for my daughter's graduation party. Instead of walking away embarrassed, I documented everything and filed a complaint. They settled for $50,000 and changed their membership policies. The speaking requests never stopped. Corporate boards wanted to understand their legal exposure. Law enforcement agencies sought training on documentation and evidence collection. Universities invited me to lecture on strategic activism and corporate accountability. At a TED Talk in San Francisco, I shared the stage with other activists who'd turned personal injustices into systemic change. The theme was, When David Meets Goliath, How Documentation Changes Everything. The most powerful weapon against discrimination isn't anger, I told the audience. It's preparation. Know your rights. Document everything. Build your case methodically. And never, ever accept "this is just how things are" as an answer. The talk went viral, garnering over 2 million views in its first month. The comments section became a forum for people sharing their own stories of discrimination and discussing strategies for fighting back. A year after Chicago, I received an unexpected letter. It was from a young black woman named Maya who just graduated from law school. She wrote, "I saw your TED Talk and wanted you to know that you inspired me to specialize in civil rights law. I just got hired by the ACLU, and I'm working on housing discrimination cases. Thank you for showing me that one person with the right strategy can change everything." That letter reminded me why the Holland Regency incident had been about more than money or personal vindication. It was about setting a precedent, showing that discrimination had consequences, and empowering others to stand up for their rights. The energy sector continued to evolve, and my company grew with it. We went public 18 months after Chicago, with an IPO that valued the company at $800 million. During the investor presentations, I often mentioned how the settlement from a discrimination case had helped fund our expansion. The story never failed to generate discussion about corporate responsibility and the real cost of bias. Drew Stanton's name occasionally surfaced in internet searches related to discrimination cases, serving as a permanent reminder of what happens when prejudice meets accountability. He'd become an inadvertent poster child for the consequences of racism in the service industry. As for the Holland Regency itself, the hotel had become a different place. The diversity training program was visible in every interaction, from the front desk to housekeeping. The staff I encountered during follow-up visits was professional, courteous, and clearly aware of the history that had unfolded in their lobby. During my last visit to Chicago, I stayed at the Holland Regency again, this time without incident. The penthouse suite was exactly as I remembered it, but the experience felt different. The victory was complete, but it was also just the beginning. Standing on the balcony overlooking Lake Michigan, I thought about all the people who'd shared their stories with me over the past year. Each one represented a moment when someone had decided not to accept discrimination silently. Each one was a small victory in a larger war for equality and dignity. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant: "You have 3 speaking requests this week: Harvard Business School, the National Bar Association, and a corporate diversity summit in Atlanta. Which ones do you want to accept?" I smiled, looking out at the city lights reflecting on the water. "All of them," I replied. "The story isn't finished yet." Because that's the truth about fighting discrimination: it's not a single battle with a clear ending. It's an ongoing commitment to standing up, speaking out, and showing others that they don't have to accept injustice as inevitable. The legacy of those 30 seconds in a hotel lobby would continue to ripple outward, inspiring others to document their experiences, know their rights, and never accept that they don't belong somewhere simply because of who they are. Sometimes the most powerful changes start with one person refusing to be silent, one phone recording, and one perfectly crafted legal strategy. Sometimes justice looks like a $10 million settlement and a racist losing his job. And sometimes, the real victory is inspiring others to fight their own battles with dignity, preparation, and an unshakable belief in their own worth. The end.